That so many of you could join us for today's program. I want to thank Liberty Mutual for their generous sponsorship of today's program. As many of you know, Liberty Mutual is a longtime engaged member of the New England Council, and boy, are we grateful for their ongoing support of the New England Council. We're also very fortunate to have Ed Keneally, the Executive Vice President and Chief Public Affairs Officer, serve on our Board of Directors, and he's also our co-chair of the Financial Service Committee. And we're also delighted today to welcome Karen Morton, Executive Vice President and Chief Compliance Officer, who will introduce our guest in just a few moments. Needless to say, the fall has gotten off to a very busy start here at the New England Council, and we have several other great events planned in the next couple of weeks. In October, look forward to Capitol Hill events with Representative Lori Trahan, House Minority Whip Catherine Clark, and Senator Sheldon Whitehouse. As the 24 New Hampshire primary fast approaches, we will be hosting Florida Governor Ron DeSantis at Politics and Eggs in just a few weeks. And last, but most certainly not least, we hope that all of you will be joining us for our 23 annual celebration on the evening of October 26th, where we will celebrate 4 remarkable New Englanders of the year. And Larry has indicated this morning we have 171 tables sold. So we'll probably be in the 1,700, 1,800 of our dearest New Englanders here to celebrate these remarkable New Englanders. But today we are delighted to welcome Massachusetts Attorney General Andrea Campbell for her first appearance before the New England Council. As we've often done in recent months, we're going to forego a formal speech and instead have more of a conversation with the Attorney General. And we will be asking some questions initially, giving you some time to think of your own questions to ask. But first, I am pleased to welcome to the stage Karen Morton, the Chief Financial Officer at Liberty Mutual, to introduce our very special guest.
Good morning. I can't tell you what a privilege it is to be here and standing before all of you. I've known Andrea for a really long time, but I'm not going to get into that quite yet, because first I have to give you a little infomercial about Liberty Mutual. So on behalf of Liberty Mutual and its more than 50,000 employees worldwide, I want to join Jim in welcoming you here this morning for a very, very special program with Andrea Campbell, our Attorney General. You're in for a treat. Liberty Mutual is honored to be this morning's sponsor and proud to be a member of the New England Council. We're headquartered in Boston, as most of you know, but our people, our customers, and our reach spans around the globe. In business since 1912, today we are the 5th largest global property and casualty carrier. But more important than our global reach and the actual business that we're in, Liberty has a significant presence in the neighborhoods where our employees and our policyholders live and work. In 2022 alone, Liberty and its employees contributed almost $64 million to educational, civic, community health, and human services organizations, as well as arts and cultural organizations striving to make a difference in their communities. And our employees, which I'm most proud of, logged nearly 64,000 hours at more than 1,200 nonprofits in their communities. So as you can see, we're really much more than Emu, and Doug. At Liberty Mutual, we believe progress happens when people and businesses feel secure, which is why we so value our membership in the New England Council. Excuse me. The Council succeeds by bringing together the region's business, academic, nonprofit, and philanthropic communities to leverage the collective strength and resources of an otherwise small group of states with common goals. It's been accurately called the nation's most successful example of a multi-state, nonpartisan collaboration that advances a shared agenda. Not bad description of an organization about to celebrate its 100th birthday in a couple of years. And Liberty Mutual has been as a member with the New England Council for almost all of those 100 years. So I'd like to thank you, Jim, for what you and your team do for New Englanders and New England business. So now I am significantly honored to have the opportunity of introducing this morning's speaker. I first met Attorney General Andrea Campbell over coffee when she was considering running for the Boston City Council and dedicating her entire career to public service. If you take a quick look at her resume, graduate of the Boston Public School System's Boston Latin, her attendance at Princeton and UCLA Law, member of the Boston City Council, including a term as president, and now our Attorney General of the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, you would be mistaken if you concluded that Andrea came from a privileged background. Simply not true. But what we do know about our Attorney General is that she has an amazing story who has shaped and informed her success over the years. Shortly after she was born, her father was incarcerated. When she was 8 months old, her mom was killed in a car accident. Attorney General Campbell and her family relied upon the services that we all need from time to time and has shared with me the profound impact that her grandmother had on her life. As I mentioned, she's a proud graduate of Boston Latin School, and while she attended Princeton University, she also suffered the loss of her dad. After graduating from Princeton, Attorney General Campbell attended UCLA School of Law and received her law degree. And she also had to experience another loss by losing her twin brother at age 29. A few years ago, I met a law school classmate of her at a bar event, and she said to me, "Do you know Andrea?" I'm like, "Of course I know Andrea." She's like, "You need to know, she's the real deal." I said, "I got it." She is indeed. She is indeed. Oh, yeah. Thank you for that clarification. You can also see what I failed to mention is she has an incredible sense of good humor, right? Which is terrific. But these challenges, coupled with her extraordinary drive, help shape the brilliant, empathetic, focused, and highly successful public servant that she is. As Andrea Campbell has once said, she was determined to turn pain into purpose, and that's the type of resilience that we all can benefit and learn from, both personally and professionally. It is also important not to forget that Andrea Campbell is the first Black woman to qualify for the ballot in a statewide race in Massachusetts. She is the first Black woman ever to serve as Massachusetts Attorney General, and only the second Black person after our beloved Edward Brooke to hold that office in this state. Her track record as a public servant is best amplified by her ability to give voice to the Commonwealth's most vulnerable. Her office is an advocate and resource for the people of Massachusetts in so many ways, including protecting consumers, combating fraud and corruption, investigating and prosecuting crime, and protecting the environment, workers, and civil rights. Andrea, Attorney General Campbell, thank you for being here this morning and your dedication to making things better for every citizen in Massachusetts. And with that, ladies and gentlemen, please join me in welcoming to
Yeah, the green light's on.
There
You're
you
on.
go.
And we just thought it'd be a little more informational by having a conversation rather than asking the Attorney General to give a formal 20-minute, 25-minute presentation. So maybe we'll start off with some soft questions, and then build up. The first one, obviously, is you've been in office 9 months. Surprises on being the Attorney General?
First of all, I just have to start from a place of gratitude, which I always do. Thank you all for being here this morning. Thank you, Jim. I feel like we're just hanging out and doing these conversations every other month, which is fantastic. Karen, I just said to Ed and everyone at the table, I think that was the best introduction I have ever had. So thank you very much. And one thing she didn't mention, I was a part of the Women's Bar Association, the Women's Leadership Institute, And Karen was a mentor in that space for me and so many folks. So when we were young lawyers sort of in the trenches, there are always folks who are in different spaces investing in your leadership. And so you have been one of those folks, so thank you very much. And thank you to everyone who's serving food and coffee. All these things are really important. We probably take for granted that people had all this before we got here. And lastly, I want to thank my team. I think most of them are sitting way over there. There are many folks from the AG's office who work hard every single day, who some of you know. And if you don't know, get to know them. I want to extend gratitude to my team. 9 months, challenging, yes, but I love my job. I'm going to see the governor later today, the LD. I love my job. I just think with the issues that we're facing right now, whether it's the Supreme Court, issues related to the Supreme Court, DEI efforts, and ways in which to continue to promote that, particularly in our corporate community, the environment, the opioid crisis, which hasn't gone away, human trafficking, public safety issues, everything related to affordability. I can go on. The AG's office is at the forefront of those issues, and as divisive as Washington, D.C. is, it really is becoming more incumbent upon the states to step up and lead. And so it is an honor and privilege to serve in this role. And so I don't know that there's been any surprises. I would say I knew the job was a good one, but I didn't realize that we really do punch above our weight in Massachusetts. As I go to more conferences to meet with other AGs, Republican and Democrat from across the country, I get on the plane and sometimes I want to be in tears because we have not only the best office and best public law firm in the country, we have the ecosystem of people, innovation, progressive laws, organizations like this, where we're working together to get things done. And that's not true for every single state. And we're working to do that in partnership with other states and, of course, in a bipartisan way. We're really leading the way. And I think we have to celebrate that. And sometimes we may take it for granted that we live in Massachusetts. So I feel really blessed to serve in this role at this moment in time and able to do some really remarkable things.
So you said not too many surprises. How about challenges?
Just hiring, maybe. You know, we're constantly telling folks that we're hiring. I'm currently looking for a DEI chief, and great lawyers, great litigators, great staffers. We're posting positions, I feel like, every single day. And so I want to make sure that we have the adequate staff and human capital. We're an office of close to 600 individuals across Boston, New Bedford, Worcester, and Springfield. But if we're fully staffed, we could be close to 700. So that is a challenge of finding good talent. And frankly, we don't pay our public servants enough. So I've been at that State House advocating not just for the salaries to be comparable, say, to a DA's office or another state agency, but for these salaries to be respectable for the work that public servants do every single day to protect us, to lead the way, to offer their expertise to many of you. And so I think that is always a challenge, and a similar challenge to many folks in this room, finding good talent, recruiting them, retaining them, finding diverse talent. We share those concerns. So working hard to change that. And if any of you are interested in joining the office, check out the postings, talk to team members. We're hiring.
You indicated early on that you want to change the image of the AG's office from top cop to people's lawyer. Why is that important to you?
Some folks still refer to me individually as the top cop. Think about it, you're walking around and someone's like, you're the top cop. I don't want that label. And not to discount what law enforcement does every single day. Some are here with me as a part of our state police unit. They are on the front lines every single day. And later on, I'll be at a memorial for law enforcement that we have lost in the recent years. But I think it misses the mark because it does not speak to the breadth and scope of the work that the office does. This is an office that every single day is operating as the consumer advocate. We are protecting consumers every day, especially our elders. I just talked to one of our constituent divisions. They were saying once a week they are getting a call or complaint about someone who has been scammed by somebody for an average of $10,000 once a week. And that typically is elders. And so that if we just say top cop, we really miss that we do incredible consumer protection work with many folks in this room. It misses the fact that we also, in addition to the public safety work, use a public health lens in how we do our work. I mentioned human trafficking. We are at the forefront as we prosecute those crimes of doing it with a trauma-informed lens, which is really remarkable, and we're unique in that. It misses the fact that we have a large regulatory footprint that all of you, I think, in this room know about as we engage with businesses, not only as employers, but also as consumers. So our goal is to make sure that as we get out there to talk to the average person who doesn't have a clue who I am or what the office does. The average person right now, if you were just asking them on the street, Attorney General in the office, what do? They wouldn't know. So we have an opportunity to rebrand it so it's relevant to what people are talking about right now, including affordability, the environment, youth and their well-being, of course, business and economic opportunity here, and so much more.
You know, we had a meeting yesterday, the Disabled Persons Protection Commission, quarterly meeting, and they were given laudatory, raving reviews to you and your staff.
Awesome.
Because that agency is a agency that was created back in the mid 80s to report any type of abuse involving people with disabilities. But what is now on the curve up is financial abuse. And your office is really monitoring that, the likes of which they've never had in the past. And kudos to you and your, extraordinary staff working on that. So
that's right. And I just want to add a point on the financial abuse, which comes in the form, of course, of scams, fraud, and other things. It really is our vulnerable populations, those who have disabilities, elders, folks in long-term care facilities even, who are being targeted. And as more products come online, emerging technologies, different things, there are folks out there targeting certain populations to specifically take advantage of them. And what's worse, to make the business sort of playing field unlevel, right? There are businesses that are doing great things, and then there are others that are not. So as we talk about consumer protection, I always want to stress that the business community and those in this room and other stakeholders can really play a great part in working with us, and I know many have, in demonstrating what good practices look like and how to, what the red flags also look like.
You know, in recent years, previous attorney generals have sought to use the position that you have right now to either investigate or champion causes on a national scale, either being alone or with other AGs and groups. And, they range from climate change to, regulatory, firearms, consumer, public safety. Tell me what you're passionate about in using your position on a national level.
So I would be remiss, I am passionate about criminal legal reform in breaking cycles, whether that's cycles of poverty, cycles of incarceration and criminalization, cycles of mediocrity, all of these cycles, because my personal narrative, I think, as Karen described in many ways, it has been an illustration, an example of how you break cycles with adequate support and with opportunity. I was presented with incredible opportunity and an incredible ecosystem growing up in the city of Boston, of mentors, employers that I met when I was in high school that are still mentors and dear friends today, folks who sports that exposed me to college campuses and this idea that I could go to college, and so much more. And I think as we rebrand the office to get folks to understand the power of that office, we can do the work of breaking cycles. And so we have to, of course, we can't take on everything, figure out what that looks like. In the poverty space, there is an opportunity for the office to be more proactive, not always reactive, in creating opportunity and economic opportunity for folks through housing, through wealth building, taking on student debt, which is a close to $35 billion issue in Massachusetts. There are close to 1 million people in Massachusetts carrying close to $35 billion in debt. That's a racial wealth gap issue because it's mainly women and people of color. So that's a poverty and economic issue that we could be solving, and we're at the forefront of that work. And then, so I think that's a national conversation when we talk about student debt, but also criminal legal reform is a place we can show up. And then lastly, I will stress reproductive justice and gun violence. We just established our reproductive justice unit. We are at the forefront of that work nationally. How do we link it, though, with maternal health conversations, which sometimes they're siloed? And then the gun violence prevention unit, which will get off the ground really soon. We're at the forefront of that work. We have the most progressive gun laws in the country, Most folks don't know that. But how do we get out there to say you can have common sense gun laws, reduce gun violence, and that has to be a part of the conversation in other states. We can be out there in a greater way leading on these efforts. And so those are some of the issues we'll think about tackling.
You're announcing legislation this morning and creating a new environmental trust fund. Tell me why you did this and what you hope to accomplish with the legislation.
So the trust fund, right now, one tool in the office that people overlook, we have our litigation tools, you know those tools, our policy and government tools where we're at the State House advocating for legislation. We also have a grant-making tool where we get millions of dollars from settlements that we can use for almost any purpose we want and design grants and initiatives. And we just did that with the maternal health grant where we gave out $1.5 million to community-based organizations from every county as far as Berkshire County of folks who are doing the work of reducing these terrible outcomes when it comes to maternal health. Just a creative way of using our tool. And no other place in the country has a maternal health grant or has done really innovative work in that space. So the trust fund, what hinders some of our environmental work, and someone was talking about the Exxon case. We're still taking on the Exxon case. Yeah, exactly. We're still taking on the Exxon case. I said I would mention that. But as we do that work and get these settlement dollars from different matters, the limitation when it came to our Energy and Environment Bureau was that most of those funds went to the general fund or they were not within our control. So this trust fund will allow us to be able to use those dollars, but specifically invest in environmental justice communities where we know they have borne the brunt, and not just gateway communities, some of our rural communities too, of climate injustice, and be really targeted in our investments in closing gaps in those communities. So I'm excited for that.
You know, artificial intelligence is a conversation that the business community talks about each and every day, and it's a tool that probably going to be around to stay, good or bad. But I know you've been involved with other attorney generals in calling for a study on how AI can and be used to exploit and endanger children through the generation as child sexual abuse material. How can the business community, more importantly, support the efforts to prevent bad actors from taking advantage of this new technology?
It's a great question, and it links to the national conversation. This is certainly and definitely a place I want our office and our state to lead on. AI, machine learning, emerging technologies, this space, no one really is leading on. I think the business community is waiting and anticipating that some regulatory framework might come out at some point from somewhere. Maybe DC, I doubt it, because they just can't get anything done, it seems. Internationally, people, of course, are coming out with different models. And I'm going to a lot of conferences with AGs across the country, and I would just have to say, some who don't know anything about AI, it's really scary, actually, to sit next to an AG who's like, have you tried this chat GBT? I'm like, it's GPT. And they're like, have you seen this? This is amazing. And you're sitting next to folks who are engaging with the technology for the first time. That's just scary. So what I've said to the team is these quick 30-minute or 45-minute panels at these conferences, the question is always left, okay, what do we do next? We need to be answering that question. We have the technology, we have the higher ed institutions, the companies, the innovation. We have it all here. We have folks using this technology in a positive way. And so I'm actually going to hire someone, that can't say who now, to help us just sort of do this work in a less siloed way. In the office, we're taking on some of the discriminatory effects of this new technology in different parts of the office. We're also talking about the positive of it, and the office uses some of this technology with some of its discovery work through an external vendor, so we clearly know the positive sides of it. But how do we have a larger convening right here in Massachusetts, where we invite other AGs and others to participate and be a part of that conversation, to convene everyone as we think about what a reasonable and fair regulatory framework looks like? The business community absolutely has to be at the table for those conversations. What is positive? What is working? What is not working? What are you concerned about? In the healthcare space, there are concerns about its usage. In the housing space, and other sort of financial products, So this is the place where I would love for us to lead. And it's not an area of expertise for me, but I've been in the weeds and excited about the possibilities. So more to come on that, and we will definitely make sure that folks are engaged in those conversations going forward.
You know, for years, the Attorney General's office has played an important role in combating the opioid epidemic that has just plagued our region, our country. Over 100,000 individuals have lost their lives in the last couple of years. I mean, the numbers just keep going higher and higher. And, you know, the AGs throughout the United States have they've been holding the pharmaceutical companies who inappropriately marketed those drugs to investigate them and prosecute and what have you. But the numbers keep spiking. What do you think your role will be on that in that area?
I have to first give credit to our governor, who really led the way when she was AG in taking on pharmaceutical companies and just bad actors in this space and doing it in a bipartisan effort across the country. And because of that work, we are receiving and continue to receive settlement dollars going into our municipalities. Where I'm pushing the team and we're working actively on this is sort of what is our opioid 2.0 plan. More settlement dollars will come in, and we have to be ready. Municipalities have to be ready. I don't think every municipality is. I just reviewed charts of, you know, how much money has municipalities received. What are they doing with those resources? It's a little early. We don't anticipate all have spent that money yet, but to the extent some have, on what? Because if you're following the national conversation, folks are spending these resources on police cars and other things that aren't necessarily directed towards ending the opioid crisis in terms of treatment, recovery, and other innovative ideas. And so we have an opportunity working with the administration and Health and Human Services on ensuring the settlement dollars still go out to municipalities in a fair and equitable way, including out to Central and Western Mass. And also then holding folks accountable and offering that technical assistance on how they spend the dollars. And I think there's a more active role. We're playing a very active role because we are connected with municipalities, pulling them into these settlement conversations, getting them to sign on. But how do we go back to them to make sure they have everything they would need? And there's some legislative fixes too. There's some municipalities that need certain provisions changed at the State House to allow them to be able to spend these dollars in a more efficient way and less bureaucracy and paperwork for their finance teams. So we are pushing some of that legislation, which hasn't happened yet, hopefully trying to be that convener, get everyone on the same page about we have a unique opportunity to deliver. Because soon companies are going to put out their annual reports talking about we did this settlement and look what happened, and probably celebrating it. We want to make sure they're truly celebrating great work that will actually end the crisis in a meaningful way. And one other piece that goes hand in hand with this work is the law enforcement piece. We have folks every single day working in partnership with the state police in our unit, outside of our unit, but also local law enforcement on cracking down on fentanyl trafficking. That has not slowed down at all. We just had a major bust on the North Shore, Lawrence, Lynn, Haverhill, working with local law enforcement. That's a major concern still, and it goes hand in hand with gun trafficking. These cases are connected in many ways. And if we don't get the other part right, the preventative part, the recovery part right, we will have law enforcement just sort of spinning their wheels. And so we're thinking about all of this, of course, in a holistic way, and then focusing on our young people. We use grant dollars to fund programming in middle schools. We need to expand that quickly. We need folks to understand the risk. Every little thing that says, I'm just taking an Advil. Actually, if someone's just handing you an Advil, you probably don't want to take that. It's very scary. I don't want to leave this in doom and gloom, but it's very scary. Talking to college-age students, talking to young people about really not just not taking drugs, but being mindful of what is out there. Fentanyl is in almost everything. Drugs and marijuana, things are just laced with a whole bunch of things. And folks need to be educated on that sooner than later and have honest conversations about what the fear is and the risk they're taking with their life. And I think there's a way to do that in our schools at an earlier age and invest more there, which is really important to me as a mom of 2 kids.
You know, I hear from the New England Council members each and every day the challenge that they face in the workforce. They can't find enough people to to employ. You've taken a leadership role on this issue. And your 18 other AGs, I think, throughout the United States, sent a letter to the Secretary of Homeland Security asking him to sort of expedite work permits for legal immigrants who are already here. How is that going? What more can we do to address this? We're in a state of emergency and how to handle, the newly arrived immigrants here. So the role of the AG in this?
It's significant, and I'm really proud of the work the office is doing in this space. We're a right to shelter state. We say we're a welcoming state. We're not just saying it. Every action we take exemplifies that fact. And frankly, not just welcoming those who have a pathway to citizenship, even welcoming those who are undocumented, and pushing Congress to come up with a solution that will help folks have a pathway to citizenship, as we did for every generation years ago who came here looking for opportunity. We need to do the same for folks who are coming from other countries that may look more like my demographic, frankly. And we have a unique opportunity to get this right. Frankly, we have to get this right because at some point it will become a political issue, which I think at moments can distract from us actually helping people and looking to get this done in a really productive way. So yes, we sent that letter, and everything I do, I try to do it with other AGs. And frankly, Republicans and Democrats. Right. I'm calling everyone, hey, join us. And sometimes we have success and sometimes we don't. But I was really proud of just folks stepping up to send that letter, and to then have the governor, of course, send a letter, and many folks in the business community also send letters. Really important. And if you have not been following the news, the Biden administration heard us loud and clear. Now, for those who are paroled into the country, they have promised to process these within 30 days. It was 8 months and 9 months and longer than that. So that's a major change. For those who are on the asylum path, to extend work permits for 5 years, that's huge. And of course, TPS protections as well. And all of that contributes not only for us being that welcoming state and saying that we value immigrants, but also demonstrating it. It helps with the workforce shortage. Everywhere I go, people are talking about we don't have enough people. And the last I checked, without an immigrant population, our economy would crumble. I often joke if I were Oprah, which clearly I'm not, and I had billions like Oprah, I would give all those who identify as being an immigrant a week off paid, and I would say, don't go to work, just do whatever you want, frankly. Enjoy that paid leave for a week. So people could feel what would happen to Massachusetts, our healthcare industries, our long-term nursing care facilities, and so many other industries. What would happen to our industries if those populations of folks did not show up? It would crumble. And I think that's what people at moments need to feel when we say that we care about this population of folks, and to make it more real to folks who are like, oh, that just doesn't apply to me. It does. The very things we take probably for granted professionally, they are showing up to work, but also who's caring for our loved ones, right? Who's cleaning our hospitals? Who's making sure the T is working and operating and safe? And of course, during COVID, we saw that. And I think we have to remind ourselves of what that looks like. So we're going to fight every single day on behalf of the diverse population we have here, celebrate the cultural contributions, but also the economic contributions and everything else. And do it in a way that hopefully is bipartisan while pushing Congress to do their part, which we know, frankly, is not going to come quickly. And so kudos to the Biden administration for some of these recent developments that I think will help us get folks out of shelters, into work, and into more stable housing, and free that housing up for the other crisis that we have for people who are here looking desperately for housing, and of course to solve our homeless issue as well.
You know, we have...
Oh, I have to mention one thing. Our grant-making tool, which is open right now, we put out $750,000 to support legal aid organizations who are at the front lines of processing these applications, helping folks, to support them in doing this work, which was welcomed by so many. We're going to get that money out the door really quickly. We have the RFP out there. right now. So if you're connected to any legal aid organizations and they don't know about this, please put them in touch with our office. Real dollars to help these legal aid organizations deliver some meaningful services. And then pushing the Boston Foundation, which has a fund too, to maybe not be duplicative in going with the legal aid organizations, but focus on basic necessities and other things that these folks would need in the immediate. So we're doing a lot.
We have about 10.5 million people. I mean, we have 10.5 million unfilled jobs, and we have about 5.5 million people unemployed. We need people to come in to take these jobs.
That's right.
And I just find that bewildering to have that major gap of unfilled jobs that just sit there, and we don't allow people to come in.
That's right.
So hopefully.
And I'll just add on the economics piece, as we develop our strategic plan to focus not just reactively about how we put money back into the pockets of folks working with businesses, but proactively how we help folks build wealth. And there is a role we can play in this workforce shortage through some of this advocacy, of course, but also not just when it comes to immigrants, migrants, but those who are formerly incarcerated, who are looking for opportunity, those who've experienced substance use disorder, who have gone through successful recovery and treatment and now looking for a job and need a job. I know there are many employers. I was at AIM with half of you yesterday at AIM. Good to see you all again. But I was at AIM yesterday where I know employers are also open and wanting to employ these folks. And there's a way in which we can show up to offer support in that, to maybe fund some creative initiatives. We're even talking to some higher ed institutions for formerly incarcerated about investing in entrepreneurship as well. So this is something we want to take on and offer our convening power, but also our investment power and so many others, because that's an untapped resource as well that can help companies close these gaps. And people need a second, maybe they need a third opportunity. And I think many of us, if we really are honest with ourselves and looked in the mirror, we probably had to have a second or third opportunity too at some point, because we screwed up and someone gave it to us. So how can we do the same for others?
You are very disturbed with the recent U.S. Supreme
notes.
Court.
These are written notes.
Yeah, oh yeah.
Look at that. Printed, written, look at that.
Thank you, General. Thank you.
This is great.
You are very disturbed with the recent U.S. Supreme Court decision that ended the race-based affirmative action by many colleges. Your thoughts in going forward? What message would you give to the business community?
Well, I was very disappointed, and I made that crystal clear. Just the Supreme Court, as you look at these opinions and the partisanship, the politicization of the court is very disturbing. If you care about the integrity of institutions, the independence of institutions, the rule of law, everyone should be concerned about how everything is just so political. Which people ask me, how do you balance that? I don't put the politics aside. We have decisions to make based on certain things. And if we want to change policy, then go to the State House and go to other places to get it done. That particular decision, it clearly took a tool away from higher ed that was useful to them and so many others in making sure that their institutions were not only diverse, but that, for example, the classrooms that their students sat in also had a robust conversation and experience, because we know how essential that is to character development, to economics, and so many other things. Diversity is critical. We don't need another report. And it was also personal for me because I went to UCLA Law School after Prop 209, which also took away race-based admissions in California and the devastating effect it had in California, including on the law school, which is a public institution. My class, there were 13 black students out of close to 400. In the class that graduated before me, close to 400 students in that class, there were 6 black students, 1 black female. The numbers dramatically dropped from the 60s, the 70s, the 80s, where you had a black alum coming back and said, I love UCLA Law School, and this is what it did for me. So if anything, I'm pushing, working with the working group, with the governor and many others, for folks to look at California and, of course, other ways in which to revamp their application processes, to hopefully allow them to solicit information from those who are applying to get a sense of who they are to help them create that diverse class. One thing I will also continue to push, I'm a Princeton alum. Princeton I love, it did a lot for me and it continues to, but they also have policies in place that create barriers. You talk about an unfair playing field. If it was race that was used, okay, that was unfair. Well, let me tell you, legacy, sports scholarships, financial aid packages, sometimes there's transparency, sometimes there's not. There's a lot of things that make it unfair. So they need to put up a mirror and really have honest, deep conversations about what are the policies and practices at our institutions, particularly the Ivies, that we have in place that also create an unlevel playing field for certain applicants to apply and be successful in admission. Pushing that. And two other things I'm pushing, because I think it has to be really holistic. K through 12, frankly, K birth to 12. The last I checked before the Supreme Court decision, folks were not particularly poor residents, students with disabilities or IEPs or 504 plans, students of color. They weren't graduating from high school. They weren't actually being successful in being able to go to college. Or maybe they were going to community college, taking remedial classes, incurring debt, dropping out, and that was the end. Our investments in just a high quality education and ensuring every student from childcare, birth, has access to that, affordable childcare, critical. We don't need another report to talk about the importance of that education, which I got going through Boston Public Schools, all the way from pre-K to the 12th grade. That is not true for folks in Boston and so many other communities. You can't go to college and be successful if you're not successful at the outset. We need greater investment and a real conversation on how we're getting it right here in Massachusetts and how we're not for so many folks. Then lastly, we got to invest in public ed. The UMasses of the world, Bunker Hill, our community colleges. All of your workforce is not going to come from the Ivies. Good luck trying to just fill your jobs with just Ivy League graduates. It's not going to happen. You need these other institutions. How do we invest in them? How do we change the language about a UMass or any other public ed institution as being equivalent to what they can deliver in terms of skill and talent as a Harvard or Princeton? How do we also make sure that when students are going there, they're not incurring debt, the fees and tuitions are not always on the rise? These conversations just as important to the conversation, because the Ivy League's only going to solve so many issues. As we sometimes stay in our little bubbles of network, which I appreciate, I benefit from it, I recognize my privilege, but if we're going to transform the world in such a way that we have a workforce that can compete internationally and deliver, and folks actually to take a job that they love and passionate about with the skill development, we really have to have a holistic approach on education, and it's something I care deeply about. And we have a children's justice unit in the office that will do more focus on this work, so more to come. Sorry, I go on because I wouldn't be sitting here but for the grace of God and the great education I had. And I don't think that we talk about that enough in certain communities that have continuing to be left out of just access to a high quality education.
I just have one other question before we have an opportunity for others to ask.
Yeah.
Housing problem. I don't think people are aware that the AG can play a role in the housing. I think you just issued some advisory regarding multifamily zoning laws near with the MBTA communities. Can you talk a little more about that?
Yes, it's, again, a part of that rebranding. We play a role in housing in so many different ways. One is we obviously can issue legal advisories. We did that early on in my tenure, making it clear that the MBTA Communities Law, which is a great law, passed in a bipartisan way, including with former Governor Baker, that it's not voluntary. It's mandatory in terms of compliance. There are municipalities that have this the T as a public good, who were saying, no, thank you, you can just keep the money, we'll just give it back. We don't want to comply. We said, no, that's just not how it works. We'll keep our money if you want, sure, but you have to comply. And why this is important, it's a major issue, not only for just a resident trying to find a place to live that's affordable, or trying to find a place to own that's affordable, but also for businesses. You can't bring in new talent from other places if you can't afford to live here or keep your talent, especially if families want to expand. Good luck. Critical issue, just like transportation infrastructure, healthcare costs, other things, energy costs. And so that advisory was well received. The municipalities are working with us along with the administration to work to build more housing. If we have to go to a stronger enforcement tool, we will. There's one municipality that's kind of like, well, and we're like, no, it's not well, get to it. And we're trying to work, particularly with smaller municipalities that need more technical assistance, I get it, that need more support, that are smaller than, say, a Boston, maybe need more resources. We get that regional equity issue and want to work in partnership to get housing built to solve this issue. So it's a major role we play, along with other issues that we will spend more time on, which is still discrimination still exists in accessing capital to buy a home. And some of the new technology where people are being denied a loan, that's a major issue of who's being disproportionately affected by that. The appraisal issue keeps coming up in the housing space. If you're a homeowner of color, your value is lesser than if you're your white counterpart. So there's more conversation to be had, but also more action. And so this is a major part of where we see the economics. Housing is a major tool to close the racial wealth gap. How do we invest in on-ramping opportunities for housing opportunities in Massachusetts? Working with the governor and all of you. More to come on that.
We have time for just one or two questions.
Oh,
Joanne
wow,
Simons?
geez.
A lot.
Thank you so much. It was really informative. So there are a lot of us representing the nonprofit community in the room.
Yes.
And this is a great convener for us. And, of course, we have a lot of our philanthropic supporters here as well. Lately, many of us are being approached by cannabis companies who want to provide support to us. And, of course, each of us will have to make our own moral decision about that. But I wanted to ask you whether or not the legal position might be for those of us who are looking to obviously always continue to have more dollars, but want to stay on the right side of the law.
We should talk offline about that. I think my team was like, did you just give out legal advice in a certain way? And I've known to go rogue. Yes, it's maybe a moral decision, et cetera. Obviously in Massachusetts, they're legally operating here. People are building their business. We're working with the Cannabis Commission, obviously, and doing our part to grow this industry. Next week, actually, I will be hosting AGA, which is bringing bipartisan AGs here for a conference. And cybersecurity is one major issue along with the cannabis industry. So it's growing and it's building wealth in certain communities. Some folks may have other opinions on that, but it is in many instances. We also just sent a letter, or we will soon, to the federal administration on the banking pieces of this, in saying you really have to make it crystal clear that cannabis industries can be working with financial institutions based on the federal law. And so we are pushing them to change some of that and be crystal clear on what financial institutions and the role that they can play with cannabis companies, which is really important. So there's a lot we're doing. So I think that actually would support some of the ideas you're talking about, but we can continue that conversation offline.
The House of Representatives has passed the cannabis banking bill 7 times. It's in the Senate, and yesterday one committee passed
That's
it.
right.
So it's...
And our letter, actually, that we just approved, I think yesterday, was directing it to Congress, but also continuing conversations with the federal administration. But on this support of this bill, and it's a bipartisan effort.
Marjorie Aarons Barron. Extraordinary photo, a journalist extraordinary, everything.
Keep going, keep going.
Good for you, right?
I want to follow up on the Mass Transit Communities Act that you were just discussing. 177 communities have until December to submit rezoning plans. Some of them are struggling, as you know. How will you assess those communities that you will take action against, and what would the punishment be? And I hear in different places that some of them are talking about filing home rule petitions to have modifications in the requirements. How will you react to those kind of subset of issues?
So a few things. I, along with, including community-based housing organizations, DHCD, well, formerly DHCD, continue to offer technical assistance. We're not in the weeds. We are a little bit on reviewing what the responses are. Usually that's our housing agency, state level, that is going through and saying they're in compliance, and we are getting those updates. And if someone is not, we're going back to say, you need to build out your plan here, et cetera. We're doing that sort of jointly, and with our new housing secretary as well. And I want to say that we think the majority of municipalities are moving in the right direction, but why we're keeping, obviously, our ear to the ground is while some municipalities are in compliance by some of those metrics, if a developer is going in to meet with, say, the town planning council to build, they were hearing, well, the meeting didn't go so well. And why is that? That there's still maybe some municipalities, at least in the meetings, maybe through their behavior or how they show up in the meeting, sort of standing in opposition. We're also hearing that there are folks who want the town or municipality to buy the property and through or take it through eminent domain, for example, and not build. So we're keeping our ear on the ground and in real time reaching out to those municipalities to say that's not going to cut it. You know, there is law in the books to say you can't do that if it wasn't made clear. There's laws in the books to say you can't do that. And so which helps put them, I think, in the right direction and the right path. If we get to a place where after they meet all these deadlines, they still are not moving, we will sue them. But we're not there yet. And they frankly there are different deadlines, as you probably know, that they have to comply with. We are following those deadlines. We are working with them. And then we will do our part to push. And if we have to do more greater aggressive enforcement, we will do that. And we've said crystal clear, it could be a fair housing violation, it could be a whole bunch of things, and we're willing to go there, which of course then still drags out the fight. So we hope that through the process of shaming some of these folks and also making it crystal clear what the law is, which some municipalities have said, we didn't know that. Thank you for that clarification. We will come back around, but we will continue to be aggressive. We will continue to follow that. We haven't seen, I mean, obviously that's probably going on the governor's side, right? But we will continue to follow that. They don't necessarily come to us. We're the governor's office, her legal counsel as well. The Secretary of Housing will maybe come to us and say, hey, maybe have an opinion here. But anything that stands in the way of this, we will stand in opposition. And we hope, obviously, the governor and the home rule petition still has to pass through the legislature. We hope that they will stand up for their own law they passed and say, that's not going to happen, which then takes that advocacy issue off our plate, and we focus on the enforcement and implementation.
Other questions for the general? Yes, ma'am.
Thank you. Hi, I'm Hannah Poore with the Union of Concerned Scientists. You briefly touched on the Exxon lawsuit, and for those who don't know, Massachusetts was one of the first and now one of more than close to 40 towns, counties, and states to file lawsuits against the fossil fuel industry for its decades of deception and climate impacts. So I was wondering if you could let us know what's coming next with that lawsuit.
When I was on the council, I could say whatever I wanted. I've learned quickly you just can't. It's actively moving. Discovery is ongoing. There's a lot of documents to review. And as I was saying to your colleague, Rich, who is my Energy and Environment Bureau Chief, who comes with decades of legal experience, this case is his baby. He led the lawsuit. He continues to lead the team. So if anything, because of the level of document review that we have to do, we just have to keep expanding our human capital and are looking at external ways to do that, frankly, so it moves it along. Because as you can imagine, a major case like this takes a lot of resources, and we can't let it take over everything as we do sort of the environmental trust fund work. We push now to reach our environmental goals, and frankly, push a couple of our divisions in that bureau to be more aggressive in taking on bad actors in various communities who are polluting air, wetlands, even with a notice to stop and a cease and desist, they still are doing it. And so pulling some of that human capital into that aggressive enforcement work through EPD is a major focus. But it's not going anywhere, that's for sure. And we continue, of course, to stay in contact with other AGs. So more to come.
Maybe one more question? Let me just shred it out, though. All right, go ahead,
We got
Jim.
here and
I mean,
here.
you got your bride with a question, I just want to spread it out, but go ahead, Jim. And then I got a gentleman here, and
Quick
wrap it.
question. Quick
Hold the
question.
mic.
You were talking about involving in national issues. To what extent do you plan on getting involved with others, attorneys general, in the antitrust suit against Amazon?
Oh, we're in. We joined yesterday. Obviously, we've been back and forth with the FTC on this. We joined yesterday, and
Sam.
there was some news coverage today about us joining that. And we are always looking for opportunities, particularly where there's a bipartisan effort across the country. So Amazon is one of them. Our multi-state investigation into social media companies and the effect they're having on the mental health of our kids is a major place that Republicans and Democrats are showing up. And in Amazon, that will keep coming up because it's fresh. I quickly just want to say, we applaud innovation in companies that are doing great things, and Amazon clearly has changed the game and what the online commerce market looks like and what it is. But we also believe in competition. And as we get more information about some of their practices that inflate prices, that really harm third-party vendors, and really shut out real competition from other markets, including a Walmart or Target or others, to be able to participate in this online market. There are legitimate claims there to say, wait a minute, we need more transparency on how you make these decisions, which we think involve a lot about money and greed, and how it affects the consumer, including businesses and vendors, especially small businesses. So we hope through this bipartisan effort, more transparency will come, more information publicly about how they do certain things that have a negative effect. And I think we can celebrate the positive while also talking about the negative stuff is not good for consumers and third-party vendors. So more to come on that. But we joined. We're in.
Gentleman with the red tie, just identify yourself.
Hi, Jose Gonzalez with Project Steph. How are you? Thank you for being
Doing
here.
great. Good to see you.
That actually was my question, so I'll just ask another question. I was curious about, I know that the House has been receiving several bills over the years regarding the tightening of liquor licensing and all of that. I was wondering if there's any progress. I know the happy hour bill and all that kind of stuff, it has been kind of coming and going. I wasn't sure if you could comment on sort of where the state is in that moving in that direction.
We're not in the weeds on that, to be candid. I mean, when I was on the city council, more so, obviously, and saw it as an economic tool. And there was some creative thinking coming from folks who own different restaurants on how to do that in an equitable way, make it more affordable, transfer your licenses, and make it easier for folks to start up. It's not only start a restaurant, but also have a liquor license as affordable. So I think it's an effective tool. We're not in the weeds on that one, though. Cannabis and everything else, we are. And more so, I should say, because of what's rising to the top. And then other industries that we're sort of focused on. But yeah.
One final question. Someone head over here. Have the mic.
Hi, Andrew Cohen
Andrew.
from SMR IT Services. You mentioned cybersecurity previously. I was wondering if you could expand a little bit on what the AG's office is doing in that area.
A lot. That could be a whole hour-long conversation. And look exactly. So, well, you might. I don't, and they don't. But God bless you. We'll continue. So, one thing I want to first give credit. I just saw our former AG, Martha Coakley, who should get a lot of credit on this because she set up units, divisions in the office, including our digital evidence lab, which is the premier in I would say, the world in what they're doing in this space, along with our data privacy division and others. We won, the training continues. We hosted a conference that we continued in the post-Martha. She started it, a national conference. Actually, in my tenure, it was the first since COVID started, where we had folks from the federal government, every other state, law enforcement showing up to talk about ways in which we probably have to beef up our laws in this space, ways in which law enforcement can actually work in greater partnership to take on these threats through all types of platforms, including the dark web, ways in which we could be working with our international partners in a great way. So just the training and the convening, we continue to do that. We continued that conference earlier in the year. The human capital, I talked about the hiring piece, our digital evidence lab, data privacy division, particularly data privacy, data breaches, cryptocurrency, the expertise that exists in that particular division, data privacy, as well as the digital evidence lab, is remarkable. But we need a larger team. When we think about some of the work we're doing, particularly when it comes to cryptocurrency, which I think it scares me, I think it should scare everybody, who you have to work with to get folks their money back or to get their identities back or to help folks deal with some of these issues. We have great partners who are willing to do that and some not so much. And we don't have the jurisdiction, the tools and the toolkit to force compliance and enforcement with some of these stakeholders. So the legislative piece is something we're thinking about what more, and the team has thoughts and ideas on legislative changes we would need. So we're coming at it with everything, the knowledge, the training, specific cases we're taking on, which I can't go into specifics, but we can continue the conversation online. The policy and legislative changes, which is also really important too. So more to come.
Well, with that, I just want to thank Attorney General Andrea Campbell, and it has been a joy having her here at our first New England Council event.
Thank you all.
And very interesting.
Thank you.
Do some photos?
Sure.